Howdy, this unit is on poultry processing and it contains two parts. This presentation is on the first part for independently. This is independent processing. So after the show or while you're culling your birds, as the weeks progress, these are different ways in which, or this shows you the way in which that you could process your own birds in your backyard at your own home. The key points that we're going to talk about in this presentation are the materials that are needed, the steps that it takes, and the benefits that are obtained from processing your own birds. Yes, there are many companies that do process birds independently for you, and you can look those up to see what is in your particular area that is available to you. But today we're going to talk about if you wanted to personally, individually process your own birds. The materials that are needed. Gloves are definitely needed, and this helps with cross-contamination so that you don't intake different specific infections that are transmitted from birds to humans, like salmonella. You will also need a very sharp knife, a cone, which is optional, and the cone is in the picture that's depicted on your screen. The stainless steel, the silver cones that are in the middle of that picture, at the center of the table, that is a cone. And the bird will be slipped into that so the neck hangs down at the small end so that the neck can be slit. This is optional. You can hold your bird, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. You will also need a bucket, a trash can, and ice. There are other materials that you can use as you do it. You may see that other materials are more useful and that you like better. Some of these materials you may not want to use, but these are the very basic materials that are needed to successfully do this. The beginning steps. You definitely want to prepare your work area. Make sure you have everything set up. Make sure that your knife is sharpened very well. The sharper the knife, the easier the process this is going to go with. You want to make sure that you do have a bin for washing of the knife to wash the blood off before you do cut the meat. Make sure that as the steps go on, you'll see what is needed and how to prepare your workspace. The next important thing is to make sure that you take your birds off of food for 4 to 6 hours. This helps eliminate the food out of the stomach, get it in the intestine, so that when you do turn the birds over, they are not throwing up on themselves, and they're also not defecating, and so that fecal material will not contaminate your meat. The processing. First, you want to place the birds in the cone, or you can also hold the bird by its paws in your hands. You want to cut the jugular vein in the neck. You do not want to cut the head totally off. You just want to cut the neck and allow the birds to completely bleed out. You can leave them in the cone to do this. You can hold them. You can set them in a bucket. Just be sure that you're not doing this out in the open so that animal rights activists aren't really seeing what you're doing, because some people don't understand this process. But you do want to allow the birds to completely bleed out, and this will take about 3 to 5 minutes. It doesn't take too long because birds are small animals. They don't have much blood. Next, there's 2 different areas you can go to. If you want to pluck your birds and have your whole bird with the skin on, you will want to scald your birds in hot water, and then that will allow you to pluck the feathers a lot easier. After you pluck the feathers, you will definitely want to wash your bird. Make sure all the feces, the feathers, everything is off and your bird is clean. The next route that you can take is, instead, if you just want to skin the bird and you want to take the breasts and the legs, maybe even if the wings, if they're large enough. This is more for the smaller birds where they don't have a lot of leg muscle and they don't have a lot of wing muscle. You just want to take the breast. You can skip the scalding, the plucking, and the washing of birds. You can just place the birds directly in the ice. You can do this in an ice chest, in a trash can, in a Rubbermaid container. But for both options, you want to place the birds in ice for 2 to 4 hours. This helps the chemicals in the muscles react so that when you cut the muscle away from the bone, that the muscle doesn't just shrivel up. And this helps for a lot easier cutting too, and it just cools down the birds. Next, you want to remove the paws, the feet, the yellow part of the chicken, Some people in different cultures do eat the paw, so if you're going to eat them, you can do that and wash, clean, and sanitize and cook them to the right temperature. You want to remove the head and also the neck. You can remove the head and neck all in one piece if you would like. Next would be evisceration. Evisceration is the removal from the intestines. All intestines need to be removed. You can keep the heart, the liver, and the gizzard if you choose to, and if you choose to eat those or use them for different cultural reasons. Next, if the plucked, the whole bird is ready to cook, or it's ready to cut into pieces as breast, legs, and wings, the wishbone. However you want it cut, at this point in time, the bird is ready for that. While you are doing the evisceration, you want to make sure that none of the intestines touch the outside of the bird, because if they do have a disease or an infection of the intestine, you don't want it to contaminate the outside of the bird. If this does happen, you want to make sure to wash and sanitize your carcass so that you do not get contaminated and infected. So if you've plucked the bird, your whole bird is ready. You can leave it as a whole bird, or you can cut into the pieces like we discussed. If the feathers are still intact, you can remove the skin from the breast. You just take a little slit of the skin and it kind of rips open very easily. Then you can take the breast and the tenderloins. You can also take the legs and remove the meat from the bird. In some instances, the wings are large enough to take the meat from this. It just depends on the size and the weight of the bird and the age of the bird. Next, you want to place the meat into freezer safe bags or containers. You want to make sure that they're airtight, that they will last as long as they need to, and they're not going to get freezer burn, and they're not going to be open to other chemicals and other meats getting on them. You definitely want to label what parts of the chicken are in that particular bag, if they're breast, legs, thighs, drumsticks, wings, or a whole bird. Definitely label it, because when things get frozen, sometimes it can be hard to identify what is in the bag. So you want to label it so you know what's in there. You also want to label what day it's processed and what day it's frozen, so you know how old your meat is in the freezer. As you thaw it out, you want to thaw it out in cool temperature, slow thawing out. And you also want to make sure you cook your poultry to 165 degrees. The benefits of processing your own birds is that you're controlling what the birds intake. If you know if they received antibiotics, you know if they received growth hormones, you know if they see different additives you've added to the food. You controlled the quality of the food that they're given, and you also control what pieces of meat you want. Do you want a whole bird? Do you just want breast? Do you just want dark meat or light meat? And you're also eating this fresh. This is the freshest poultry that you can get, as if you're processing your own birds. It also gives you the ability to share this with family and friends. So if you particularly like white meat, you could share the dark meat with your friends, so you're not wasting any part of the bird. So there's a lot of benefits to processing your own birds, and processing your own birds is a very simple yet time-consuming task. And many people do it many different ways. Some people have industry pluckers that they invest in, industry scalders that they invest in, that makes the process a lot easier. You can just do it any way you want to. The way that was discussed in this unit is the easiest way, and probably not the most efficient way, but definitely the easiest way to process your own birds. And the next part of this unit, in part 2, we're going to compare individual processing to industry processing. And this is going to be done by a guest speaker, Caleb Day, and he is from Tyson Foods, and he does work at a processing plant. So he'll be able to give us some insight on the industry side of poultry processing.